Hi, my name is Leo and I'm a boat builder and a sailor, and I'm on a mission to rebuild and restore this 110-year-old classic sailing yacht, Tally-Ho. This week we're going to be focusing on lining off the hull for planking, and what that means is the process basically of working out the position and the widths of all the planks which are going to lay on the frames here. Now you may think you could just slap them on any old how, or just start from the bottom and work up, or even take the whole width and just divide it equally, but actually it's not as simple as that. You can do, but you'll end up in a mess. There are few things that do as much to accentuate the beauty of a wooden hull as well lined off planks. Alas, the opposite can also be true. A poor lining job can make the best design seem out of balance, the finest construction appear slipshod and suspect. Worse, inattention to plank placement can cost time and waste material. Above the waterline you will be able to see the plank seams through the paint, so in that area it's important to keep all the planks relatively the same width in any one place, and they will all have to taper down smoothly to be slightly narrower on the ends than they are in the middle. Below the waterline it's more about conserving the planking stock and also making it easier to actually hang the planks. But before we can line out, we've got some preparations to do, and we've got to meet the newest member of the team. She has just joined us and she's hopefully going to be here for the long term in a bit more of a sort of apprenticeship style role.
Hi, my name is Rosie, and I came up here from Portland, Oregon, where I was most recently working at a door and window shop, and before that I was working in construction. I grew up in Boston, and I heard about the Tally-Ho project from a friend of mine at a boat building school in Spain, where I spent a little bit of time last year. Part of the reason that I came up here to work on this boat is that I've had an interest in boats for a long time. I grew up sailing around Boston with my dad, and I've been working in carpentry for a little while now, and it's kind of a dream or a goal to transition into the boat building industry, which is why I'm hopefully going to be up here for the long term and stay around and learn a lot from different people who come and work on the boat.
So he said just give it a thwack?
Yeah.
All right. I think it sat down a little. If you recall back to the video where we actually made these, we made them sit about 1/8 of an inch off the keel timber. We were trying to game the shrinkage of the bronze, so we thought that if we built it 1/8 of an inch off the keel, it would shrink just enough to drop down. Well, it turns out the mold swell actually counteracts any of the shrinkage that we're seeing, so most of our finished floors, after we get them back and we put them in the boat, sure enough, they're riding about 1/8 of an inch high. So something we're considering doing is going back to the patterns that we haven't cast yet and adding just another piece of door skin to the bottom of the keel plate which would then make them sit flush when we get them back from the foundry.
I am just working out how much stock I need to buy to make some battens for lining out the boat for planking. The size of the battens we need, how many we need, and how much material I need to buy to make them, and how we're going to make them. And I need to make them before the weekend when we're going to hopefully line up. So one of the things which really helps when lining out is having quite a few very, very long battens. Now I've already got a couple which I made when I was doing the lofting, but the more the better, so we're going to make a few more. And I decided to do an experiment rather than trying to find some nice clear grained fur or something else to scarf into battens. I thought I would try layering up lots of sheets of door skin instead. Basically just to see if it might be a faster and cheaper way of making those long battens. So we've basically stacked up 6 layers of 1/8" plywood to make a 5" wide by 48-foot long batten. The next step is to cut the rough edges off it and then cut it into thinner strips, thinner battens, which will be a little bit more bendy. We do already have one very stiff long batten, and later on you'll see why we need that. But I'm hoping to get 3 or 4 thinner battens out of this lamination that we've just made. So as you guys know, since I started this project, I've been filming and editing these videos myself, apart from 1 or 2 where I had a little help from my friend Joe. And it does take a lot of time. When I start editing each video, it often starts with about 40 hours of footage, and it usually takes probably between 15 to 30 hours of editing to get that down to sort of 20 to 30 minute video. As the project is speeding up and I have to spend more time thinking further ahead, finding it even harder to find the time to do that. Now the good news is that I am hopefully getting some help with that. The guy who's going to be helping is called Charlie. He works for an engineering firm, but he's done a lot of video stuff in the past, and he's going to be coming up here for a few days per week to help initially with filming, but also eventually with some editing as well. That transition will take a little while, and I'll always be heavily involved with the editing of the videos because we want to make sure they stay in the same style. I'm hoping that at the very least having someone else with a camera here will help you guys get a bit more of a candid glimpse of what it's really like here and see some of the things that I spend my time doing when I've not set up a camera to film myself. So I'm really grateful to Charlie, and I'm really looking forward to spending a little bit less time behind the camera and a little bit more time actually boat building.
My name is Charlie Conway. I'm a project manager for an engineering firm. My company's been good enough to grant me leave to allow me to come over to help Leo with the Tally Ho project. My primary responsibilities will be to help Leo with his video production, but I do have a bit of a background in carpentry, so I hope I have an opportunity to make some sawdust as well. Oh, Pete, it's my first day on the job. You're going to make me say it, aren't you?
You don't have to say it, Charlie. Yeah, what am I doing?
That's it.
Do you want me to answer that?
Yep.
Yeah? In preparation for planking, we're hoping to line out in a few days, so got some staging set up this morning. Feels pretty good to be off the ground. Just taking care of the top sides, which is kind of the most important part for making the boat look fair. It's all important, but this is really where it's going to pay off. So some of you may not know that there's a Samson Boat Co Facebook group. It's called Samson Boat Co Friends, and you should join if you're interested in discussing wooden boats. Anyway, a couple of months ago I posted in that group asking for some suggestions on something I could use to cover the ship saw from the elements. Now I was only really expecting a few ideas, but a bloke called Aaron got in touch. He's a canvas worker and cover maker in Swan Reach in Victoria, Australia, and after a couple of emails and a few weeks, this arrived in the post today. So as you can see, Aaron has made a really nice cover for the ship saw. It's really sturdy and it fits really well. It looks a little bit baggy, but that's because it's designed to cover the ship saw whether it's in its 45-degree position or its upright position, and it should protect it for many years to come. So thanks so much, Aaron, really appreciate it. And for everyone else, I know not everyone likes to use Facebook, but if you are on there, we'd be pleased to see you on our group, Samson Boat Co Friends. So lining out is basically the process of determining the location and the sizes of all the hull planking. The first objective is to make planking easier by having planks that do not have excessive edge set or twist or too much bending really in any direction, and especially bending in and then out again. Well, that might happen. Another objective is to have planks that are narrow enough to be able to plank around the tight corners of the boat, whether that's the concave corner of the tuck or the convex corner of the turn of the bilge, without having to carve too much shape into each individual plank and therefore losing a lot of width of the planking stock. As well as all that, the planks on the top sides of the boat, that is above the waterline, they have to taper elegantly from midships where they're their widest point down towards either end of the boat. They have to all be roughly consistent in width, and they generally have to create lines which are pleasing to the eye and sort of complement the boat's shape.
I'm Tim Lee. I'm a member at the Port Townsend Shipwrights Co-Op and the lead boat builder on the Western Flyer. I offered a new Leo had planking coming up. I've done quite a bit of lining out. I used to teach at the Northwest School of Wood and Boat Building, so I built several boats. And I just asked Leo if he'd ever lined a boat out before, and he said he hadn't, and if he wanted help. So I came over to spend the day helping him line out.
What do we need, Leo? Well, that's Tim. What do we need, Tim?
You guys got your battens?
Yeah.
I would like to look at the pictures too, because I want to check and see if your shear strength is wider.
It is, yeah.
Your broads, they're slowly getting wider.
I see.
But yours look like they were all about the same width.
Yeah.
So I was thinking we could do is use a plank scale to do the top half and just get a number, and then do that section above your broads the same way. And so they would all be the same.
In terms of the actual method, there's many ways to line out a boat and there's many places to start. but many boat builders agree that the tuck line is a good place to start. This is a line that starts somewhere in the tuck, just underneath the transom, roughly around the waterline or a little bit below, and then it follows the shape of the boat down well under the turn of the bilge, and then comes up in the bow, again around or just below the waterline. The purpose of that line is really to separate two different areas of the hull, which have different characteristics in their shape. And when finding that line on the hull, it's important to use a very stiff batten so that you can find a line that isn't going to have too much edge set in a plank, it's not going to have too much twist, it's going to be a nice easy plank to lay, because that will dictate the plank that goes there and the planks around it.
Maybe this one. So you've got a pile of planking there, but you don't have any idea like what your shear strike is, or?
Here it is.
Oh, that's
part of it. That's
okay.
right at stern.
That's the stern. Pull that one out.
Pretty near the bow.
5.5.
Yeah, that'd be where the chain planks are. There you go.
Is the reason you want to start off the master line is it's the equator, right? It's that one straight plank.
Yeah.
So it's easy to establish that. Whereas if you're starting with a bent plank, it's easier to build a little unfairness into it.
Yeah.
The top of the garboard's straight, but it's almost good to put a little bit of hollow, like 1/8 of an inch of hollow on either end, because when it twists up, it'll get a little bit of a hump there. So you want to really look at that plank when you put it on there, because you won't see that bump until you're like 2 planks up.
All right.
Because it keeps.
And then it'll keep moving up with the plank.
Yeah.
So underneath this tuck line, which we've just made, we may have a couple more normal sized planks, but underneath those we're going to get down to the broads, which are planks that are usually wider than the rest of the planks, and they certainly get a lot wider as they go aft towards the stern post to fill up that large vertical space there. And often people insert extra little planks in this area called steelers, which basically enable you to split this large area into smaller sections to get away with narrower planks. It's especially useful if you don't have very wide planking stock. Underneath that you have the garboard, which is unique because the bottom of it is the rabbet, so it follows the shape of the rabbet. That often has a lot of twist in it, so a lot of builders try to make the top edge very straight so that you don't have any short grain where it flares at the ends, because as you twist it that's more likely to break. But having that plank seam too straight can actually make it look like it's drooping down at the bow as you twist it in. Again, there's no hard and fast rules here. Tally-ho's garboard doesn't have very much twist in it actually, so I was able to have a plank with a little bit more shape in it here.
Get up here. Is there a little tiny hump right here? No? If you hold this at the bottom of that, kind of midship, call that 72.5 or so.
Now the upper planks above the tuck are often, but not always, split into 2 sections as well. They would be the topside planks from the sheer down to where they just start touching the waterline, and the section in between could be called the middle planks. Adding another line here allows the manipulation of these 2 areas of planking. Again, there's no real rules here, but depending on the shape of the boat, there are several things to bear in mind about where you might want to make the planks narrower or wider, or taper slightly differently. So you'd want them to be narrower where there's a lot of shape in the turn of the bilge, in the tuck under the transom, and sometimes in the top part of the transom where there's a tight turn there. You can make them wider on the flatter areas of the hull, so just below the turn of the bilge where you have the largest flat spot, that's a good place to make up space with wider planks. And you don't want to make them too wide on the top sides of the boat, because that's an area which won't be wet all the time, and having narrower planks with more caulking seams helps compensate for the swelling and shrinkage of the wood. All the planks have to have an adequate width at their hood ends to take 2 fastenings and still have plenty of material left. The hood ends just mean the ends of the planks where they fasten into the rabbet or onto the transom. And again, the topside planks need to look elegant and complement the shear without exaggerating it too much. So these are all things which can be affected by changing the shape of that dividing line between these 2 sections of the boat, but you can't manipulate it too much. You've got to draw it on the boat with a pretty stiff batten so that you don't get too much edge set. And the reason I keep going on about edge set is that unless you have really, really wide planking boards and you're happy to waste a lot of material, you can't cut a really curved plank out of a board. And what that means is you have to cut it relatively straight, and then you have to bend it in a dimension that it doesn't want to be bended to get it to fit in the boat. And so that's edge set, and too much of that will make it very difficult or even impossible to get your plank in the spot where it needs to go.
On the outside?
Sorry, sir. 5 3/8 on the outside.
Subtracting 1 3/4 off of this, it's actually 1 5/8.
I'm used to working on big boats.
This is a big boat.
5 5/8.
So what are we doing? So the shear plank, like all the planks, tapers as it goes forwards and aft, and we've taken some measurements off the old shear plank, and then we're joining all those marks together with this very stiff batten to try and get a nice fair curve. I can see a bit of a bump from here. That clamp you're on right now wants to come down.
This one?
Yeah.
Either going up or down.
Up. The bow up a tiny bit might stop that. I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're putting the bottom of the batten on the line.
Which plank are you looking for, Leo?
I'm looking for the transom hood end on a topside plank, which I found, and it's 4 1/4, 4 1/8 actually. We got 4-1 on the transom hood ends on the top sides. Once you've got all your lines established, and you should know by now roughly how many planks are going into each section, then at each station or frame you divide that width of that section into the number of planks, and that will give you the width of each plank in that section at that frame. You could just do this with maths, but one tool that we used for this operation is called a plank scale. It's basically just a strip of plywood, and say you've worked it out for 10 planks, because you know that you're going to have 10 planks in your section. Then you can lay it up on any frame within that section, and the number that you read off it will tell you the width of each plank in that section. You can have several different plank scales for different numbers of planks, so that if you have a section defined, you can try the different plank scales on it and say, well, if I had 10 planks here, they would be this width. If I had 11 planks here, they would be this other width, and so on. To really understand how the plank scale works, imagine if every plank was 1 inch wide. Well, of course, if you had 10 planks, they would take up 10 inches. Now, if they were all 1 inch and 1/8 wide, then that would be an extra 10/8. And so the first mark on the plank scale would be 10 inches and 10/8, or 11 1/4. And that would be marked 1-1, meaning 1 inch and 1/8 per plank. If each plank is 4 inches and you've got 10 of them, of course, that's going to be 40 inches. So at 40 inches down the plank scale, it would say 4. Meaning 4 inches per plank, and at 40 inches and 10/8, or 41 1/4, it would be notated 4-1, meaning 4 inches and 1/8 per plank. This is a very traditional way of notating inches and eighths. If you want to go to finer detail, you put a little plus mark next to it, which means 1/16 over the amount of eighths that you've written down. And it's basically just like counting in base 8. It's just important to know what system you're using, because of course some people use the decimal system with inches. In that system, 1.5 inches would be 1.5, but in this more traditional system, 1.5 inches would be 1.4 or 1-4. If you see 3 numbers notated like that, say 1-3-5, that would mean 1 foot, 3 inches and 5/8. If it said 1-3-5 plus, that would be 1 foot, 3 inches and 11/16. When I first heard about this and I asked what you should do when you get to 30 seconds, I was told there are no 30 seconds in boat building. And certainly when you're talking about the hull and these kinds of measurements, you really don't need to get any more precise than the 16th. And I know most people outside of the States, apart from maybe a third of the UK, are going to be wondering what on earth I'm talking about right now. Top sides with 3.5 or 3.6.
Oh, that's not bad. So they're slightly, well, they're about the same. It's 3 5/8. It's within. Yeah.
Right, so that's great.
And then if you wanted to adjust that to make it narrower or fatter, you can put either 1 or 2 lines in between there.
Yeah.
And then you just do the same thing, but that's it.
Yeah.
Now you know how to lay out a plot line on a boat.
Ooh.
That wasn't so hard, was it? Pete thought we'd be here till forever. But that's,
it's not even beer o'clock yet.
It's always beer o'clock.
So on tally-ho, after I had spent a long time manipulating and playing with this top line between the 2 areas of upper planking, I took my plank scales and I measured what the width was going to be of all the planks on all the different stations. And it actually turned out that the way I had finally placed my batten actually made the plank widths above it and below it very, very close to identical. And so of course I decided to actually just scrap that batten and treat that whole top section above that first tuck line we drew as one big section with 20 planks in it, and split it up evenly so that each plank will be roughly the same width on each station all the way along the boat. Apart from the shear plank, the topmost plank, which will be a little bit wider than the rest of them as per the original boat, but it will taper evenly with the others. I was pretty happy it worked out this way. I hope I'm not missing anything, but I've checked and rechecked all the plank widths at different areas. I'm confident that the planks are going to go around all the tight corners nice and easy. The hood ends are the right size, and I think the tapering of the topside planks will look elegant and smooth. It should be noted that throughout this process we were measuring the original planks of the boat, which I had piled up next to it, and using those as a rough guide to the widths that our new planking should be. As with any old boat, planks have been replaced, things have been changed, things have moved, and so we can actually improve it hopefully by making it more consistent, and hopefully that's what the original builders on Albert Strange would have wanted. So it's been a really interesting week for me. I got to learn something new, which is always challenging and exciting. I found with the lining out, although I was able to find a lot of different methods through talking to different people and through reading different books, I found it hard to get a really clear picture of what the essential goal of lining out was and the reasons why these methods work. Personally, I find it really hard to just follow instructions without really understanding the why behind it. And so what I've tried to do in this video is give more of an explanation of why these steps need to be taken and the goals of lining out properly. There's no way I can show you all the different methods for lining out, and I certainly don't know them all either, but if you understand the reasoning behind it, then I think all the methods should start making more sense and you can just pick and choose one that works for you. I realise that many people watching this video will probably never line out a boat, and that's fine, but for the few who do, I hope this video lets you approach that task with a little more understanding and confidence. Anyway, that's all we got time for right now, so thanks a lot for watching, and a massive thank you to everyone who's donated or otherwise supported the Tally Ho project. It does make a huge difference, and it means I'm able to take the time to make and edit these videos, so I really, really appreciate it. I'll see you next time. Cheers.